Welcome to Purchase to Profits. I'm Seth Ferguson. Our guest today is a veteran of the U.S. Marines, the author of 3 real estate books, and worked with Marriott International before venturing out full-time in real estate investing. Mark Dolfini is the founder of Landlord Coach. He is also the managing broker of a property management company based out of Lafayette and sits on numerous boards, including the Better Business Bureau of Central Indiana, the National Federation of Independent Business, and is an area director for the Central Indiana BNI franchise. Mark, welcome to Purchase to Profits. It's great to have you on the show.
It's awesome to be here. Thanks so much for having me today.
Yeah, and thank you for your service before we go through anything else.
Oh, it's absolutely my my honor. Thank you.
So, for the listeners who maybe haven't come across you before, what are your real estate goals? What are you all about with your investing?
Well, for me, it really is about life output. I would love to say that it has always been that way, but it's easy to forget the the what it is you started getting into the things for once you start getting onto the daily minutia and you get on the hamster wheel.
Yeah, oh, for sure. So with your goals, are you like what's your goal for this year? Because we are just into 2019. Do you set annual goals, or are you like a 5 and 10 year down the road goal kind of person?
So, not a real easy question to answer because I have an overlying vision that is somewhat complex, and it's grown, and sometimes it feels like I'm putting an octopus to bed. It's like I want to put this down and then wait, okay, I got this thing. So, but I believe in the power of 3. I think 3 is a really powerful number. To us as humans, I can't explain why. I know it's a powerful number for me. So I set I set goals that are based on the number 3. So 3 months, 3 years, powers of 3. So I even have up to a 27-year vision. So it's which is three cubed. So it's a big thing for me. It's an interesting thing where as I have that overlying vision, I believe that goals are the milestones along the way. So and it's kind of a thought that we can get very, very tied to being driven to goals, but unfortunately what happens when you achieve a goal, you look for another goal. But a vision is something it can be much more nebulous, and it's something that really excites you, and it's something that you want to that it almost terrifies you to the point where you're willing to get out of bed at 3 a.m. on a Sunday morning while it's raining out. So that's why I like visions to be that big.
For sure. So do you mind sharing a little bit about your vision? I know you said it was a little nebulous and complex. Like, what are you striving towards?
Well, one of the things that's really big for me, it's really has nothing to do with, I mean, if you look at it from the outside in, someone looking at it wouldn't even know that I was a real estate guy. But one of the things that is really impactful for me is I want to impact 100,000 people. Now, that could be in a lot of different ways, but there are lots of ways that I can do that. And it doesn't really necessarily have anything to do with real estate, but although real estate is the vehicle that pays the way, right? It allows me the time wealth in order for me to go out and do the things that I enjoy. So just for example, I really love teaching junior achievement. And if for those of you who don't know about junior achievement, it's really where a business person, really anybody can do it, but an adult business person typically goes into a classroom and teaches this course on really whatever. It could be to kindergartners all the way up to seniors. And I've taught things like such as business basics, entrepreneurship, also things about personal finance, things that you really should be learning as you grow up in life, but sometimes it just gets missed by the typical education system. So things like junior achievement just really wind my clock.
For sure. And I think after you left Marriott, you jumped into real estate investing full time. What does that business look like for you? Are you into single family homes, multifamily homes? What's your niche in there?
Yeah, so let me back up just a bit if I can.
Sure, yeah.
Yeah, so where I started after I got out of the Marine Corps, I came to Lafayette, Indiana, West Lafayette, Indiana, to go to school at Purdue. And while I was at Purdue, I started buying rental properties. and I figured out, really how to get financing and everything else. I really became a student of business, not a business student, a student of business. And I think the words there matter, because even if you say, well, I'm not, college isn't for me. Yeah, but you can still become a student of business. So from that side of things, I started buying rental properties, and by the time I graduated, about 4 years later, I had about $500,000 worth of real estate, which is about a dozen rental units. So not super high-end units, but I kid, that's really, even though I was leaving college, that's really where my education began.
Yeah, for sure. And then so you've kept growing that single family rental portfolio, but before you jumped into the landlord coaching.
Yeah, so I kid, but that's really where I started making a lot of mistakes, and it was a truly an interesting thing that went on at that point in time, just because I was doing a lot of things that I thought made a lot of sense, but really they just weren't scalable. And the biggest problem is that I never substituted my labor for doing a lot of the things. And I see that as a problem, especially with veterans, but typically just in entrepreneurs in general, that most entrepreneurs that I know have a very good work ethic. The problem with having a good work ethic is that you think that you should be the one doing all the work. And that's absolutely wrong. So even though in the beginning, when I was doing a lot of the painting and cleaning and showing and doing all the doing, if you will, I never substituted my labor with systems or processes or even other labor. So as a result, I get very constrained. I got bottlenecked, and when I got to it wasn't a problem when I had 10 or 12 units and I was a single guy and it didn't really matter that much. But when I got to 20, 30, 40 units, and at my pinnacle, I had 92 rental units that I owned by myself with very little infrastructure, very little help. It was true hell. I mean, and it was absolutely the definition of madness.
Yeah, and I think that takes us to the crux of Michael Gerber's E-Myth book, where he talks about the entrepreneur, the technician, he calls it, where you're always trying to do everything, but you're not seeing your business at a high level. Um, how, how much do you think you being involved in every facet kept your back from growing your business more? Do you think you could have achieved, maybe double or tripled the results if you would have, set up a system sooner?
That's an interesting question. I never thought of where I could have gone. All I could tell you is where I did go and what it ended up costing me.
Yeah.
So what I think is important for people to know is they're thinking I know they're doing the kind of the mental math going, "Hey, if you had 92 rental units, you're probably doing pretty well." And I was bringing in roughly 60 to $65,000 a month in rent revenues. And so I wasn't doing too bad for a guy who was, in his early 30s. But the juice wasn't worth the squeeze. I was working 20 plus hours a day, every day, and there was just no end in sight. And it got to that point where it's like running downhill, where, you start running so fast that you can't keep your feet underneath you. And that's really what started to happen. That, I thought I had ample cash reserves. I didn't mind working hard. I was almost kind of wore it like a badge of honor. Like I was the one who was, doing all this stuff. I was doing it myself, and I'm just really bucking the system. But it was just a lesson in frustration, because even though I was still doing all that stuff, the problem was it really didn't come to fruition until things started going really bad. And I'll bet you can guess when that was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So is that when you discovered you used the term time wealth right at the start? Is that when your mindset shifted?
It did. I originally wrote The Time Wealthy Investor. And The Time Wealthy Investor is really about the concept of being time wealthy. And I am, if I can do a shameless plug here for a second, I am
Go
getting
for it.
release the Time Wealthy Investor 2.0. I'm getting ready to release that in January. So if you are interested in that book, please don't buy the original. The updated version is much better. And I'm saying that because I don't want anybody to go out and buy it and then they're like, oh wait, there's an updated version. But I believe it is a much better version of the book, just because it really breaks it down. I think, from the vision perspective, in terms of why vision is important, I don't think I made the case as good in the original version. But time wealthy is really nothing more than the ability to control your calendar. So if you look at it, I was watching a show the other day, that show Life Below Zero, and I got thinking about it in terms of the time wealth that those people have. And they have absolute control over their calendar, right? I mean, they live however they want. And if they choose to sit and hang out for a day, that's their choice. But they always have to stay busy because they could literally freeze to death the next day. So it's an interesting thought about time wealth. Now, is that the lifestyle that I would want? Not for me, and not for most people. We've grown too fond of, not pooping in buckets and things like that, but and
Yeah,
having to bury it in the ground. But there is a standard of living that we want, and we try to fit our time wealth within that. But unfortunately, um, we often think of it backwards, like, well, I'm going to get all the money that I want, and then I'll have the time wealth that I want. And I believe that's just the tail wagging the dog, because again, when you become goal focused like that, you start looking at goals, and what happens when you hit the goal? You look for another goal, and it's not. I just don't believe that that's the right way to think about it. I believe that time wealth, when you have that as part of your vision, that you're really going to be aiming at the right target.
for sure. So, and you're just using real estate as a vehicle to achieve that time wealth.
So, right. So if you look at it this way, if you look at your rental business, and I mean as a business, I don't mean as the side hustle that you might be treating it as, not you specifically, but if your listeners are treating it like a side hustle, like you may have your full-time job, you might do a flip here or there, you might have 3 or 4 buy and holds. I mean, there's lots of fragmentation going on in your world, and it's just mentally exhausting. You should be spending your mental energy on things that excite you, the things that we're given here to do, whether that's teaching or going out and digging wells in Kenya, or even just I'm a gun guy. I like to shoot, so I go out and I just really enjoy that with my sons. But whatever that is for you, we're not put here on this planet just to be industrious. We're put here to enjoy it, and to spread that joy with others. But the the really important thing that I think to take away from getting, focusing on time wealth, is it really gives you something more than just being busy, and that's where you start substituting your time with other people's time. So if you're looking at what's the highest and best use of your time, um, you start putting a value on your time, saying, hey, I'm worth 25 or $30 an hour, maybe at your job. Then does painting an apartment at $10 or $12 an hour, does that make sense? And I know in the beginning you kind of have to do that a little bit, because you might be over leveraged to a certain degree or whatever else it is, but you have to start replacing yourself as quickly as you possibly can. So I went down a different rabbit hole there. I don't know if I answered your question, but I just
Oh no,
I just wanted to make sure that I got that thought out.
that's perfect. And I think what you're saying is really important for somebody who wants to build a true business. Just because if you can be that sole proprietor grinding it out every day, but you're basically a one-man show at that point. So you can't get any decent scale to build anything up without that system and using your time effectively.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
And the main thing about that is, and the thing that I teach within the book and in my 4-day courses, is vision infrastructure process. So it really all starts with vision. And when you have that absolute clear vision for your future, then you go on to infrastructure. And that's where you start to build the infrastructure for your business. So the thought that I was thinking of earlier, and you used the word vessel, if your vision is to get downstream, a good vessel for that would be a canoe, right? Fair to say. If your vision, however, is to get to the top of a mountain, a canoe is not going to be a good vessel for that. I mean, you could drag, I suppose, it to the top of the mountain, but it's not going to hit the 3 E's for me. It's not going to be efficient, enjoyable, and certainly not very effective. So those are the things that you really need to focus on when you're looking at that. Looking at your business as a vessel to get you to where you want to go. So when you're setting that vision, wherever your vision want to take it, or you want your business to take you rather, Then you look at infrastructure, so you can set up an infrastructure that's in alignment with your vision. And for example, if you want to spend 2 months out of the year laying on the beach somewhere, that's fantastic, great vision. But you can't have an infrastructure that's going to require you to return emails and phone calls in a timely manner, because that's going to suck for you in terms of your vision. So that's why the infrastructure has to be in alignment with your vision. And then finally, part of that VIP process, you've got the P portion, which is the process. So if you think of your vision as the map, if you will, the infrastructure would be the train tracks. That's the infrastructure I talk about would be things like your website. It would be, if you have an office, it'd be the software, the computers, like all the bones of your business. And then the process is the train that runs on the tracks of the infrastructure. So that's the process would be the SOP, the rules upon which you operate, things in your lease, that sort of thing. So it really has to run in that order: vision, infrastructure, and process.
Yeah. Actually, that's a really good way to put it.
Thanks. And that's what's outlined in the Time Wealthy Investor 2.0. Like in the original book, I didn't write about it in that way. I really talked more about behavior. And really the process is really of a behavioral model that I came up with. Not to get too in the weeds on that, but it's really, if you're upset with your tenants, it's really easy to be upset with your tenants if they have the wrong behavior, and you attack the behavior. But I believe there's a much more clinical way to do that. And let me just use a different analogy in this respect. Let's say that, for argument's sake, that you hire an employee. All right, just take your rental business out of it for a second. Say you hire an employee, and that employee, you say, okay, great, I'll see you tomorrow. You start tomorrow. They show up, and you look at them and you say, you're late. What's going on? They're like, I'm here at 8:00. I don't know why you would say I was late. When you say, well, you didn't clock in, and they're like, I don't even know where to clock, where to clock in. I didn't even know there was a clock. And then you realize, you don't understand the process of clocking in. Gotcha. All right. So you show them where to clock in. You show them where they can park their car, where they can put their personal items, and that sort of thing. You say, okay, you know what? Just take the rest of the day off. I'll see you tomorrow. They come in, they clock in at 8:00, and then you're like, oh my gosh, you're late again. You clocked in at 8:00. And this person's now just almost getting frustrated because they're thinking, I clocked in just like you told me. But you know what? The expectation is that you're at your workstation at 8:00. I never conveyed the expectations to you. And then you could say, okay, and the expectation is that you're clocked in by 7:50, but no later than 7:55. That you take your lunch breaks. You're laying out expectations that if you're going to call in sick, you call in by this time, right? You don't send a text message, et cetera, et cetera. Now, and only then can you really adjust the behavior. So if they understand the process, they understand the expectations, and then you go on to the behavior. Now, of course, we don't have conversations like that, right? Like we just don't think of it that way. But I'm breaking it down in a way that's more granular, because that's really a lot of times when we're trying to address behavior, we attack the behavior, and it unfortunately becomes a tail wagging the dog. So we really have to look at, okay, I'm sorry, do you understand the process of paying rent? Yes. Do you understand the expectation that if you don't pay it by this date, there's going to be a late fee? Okay, yes. Okay, so let's talk about what happened. And it can be much more clinical. Like, you're not pissed off, they're not pissed off. Everything. It just happens in a way that's much more clinical and much more businesslike. But what happens in reality is, you didn't do this, and then they come back and say, well, you didn't fix that, and then this really crappy conversation goes on that is just not productive for anybody.
Yeah, and this works with tenants. This will work with your property management company.
It will work with your children.
Yeah. Well, hopefully with the children, you never know.
Right. Well, it's true. That's a wild card.
Yeah. So I'm intrigued because at your peak you had about 90 rental units. Is there one deal that sticks out for you that really moved you towards achieving your vision, or was a big catalyst for your business?
Yeah, when I lost about 2/3 of them. That was a transaction that sucked really, really bad. But unfortunately, that had to happen in order for me to. It was kind of like growing by attrition.
Yeah.
And I say that somewhat tongue in cheek, but that is truly what happened. I ended up I did end up losing about 2/3 of the real estate portfolio that I had, because when I was telling you earlier about I had $65,000 a month that went to $30,000 a month, and that was month over month over month. No one can weather that sort of storm. and not come out unscathed. So I did. I ended up losing about $4.5 million worth of real estate. I just got. I mean, I was beaten pretty hard. I got whipped pretty hard on that. But on the other side of that, I also got very clear in my vision, which at that point happened to be survival. And I don't mean just survival in the business. I came down with double pneumonia. I mean, I almost died in the hospital because I was working like a dog. Um, and those days in the hospital, I got a chance to get very clear in terms of what I was trying to accomplish. And it was about survival. And of course, you look at all your other options of walking away and getting a job and doing all this other stuff. But I doubled down. I chose to get smart. And that deal, unfortunately, it wasn't one deal, but it was a series of deals where I ended up losing, to foreclosure, and sometimes I just did deed in lieu, and I mean, whatever it was I could do. But fortunately, I didn't declare bankruptcy. And fortunately, everybody got something. I mean, they may not have got paid in full, but they got something, and that was why I was just intrinsically not okay with filing for bankruptcy, just because there was just it was something that I felt that I could work through, and I'm so grateful that I did.
For sure. What, if you don't mind me asking, was it a situation of leverage where you were over leveraged and that's what kind of caused everything to start falling down, or what was the key event there?
It was being over leveraged in many ways. So I would love to say
Okay.
about, it was just about financial leverage, but it really wasn't just financial leverage. I was over leveraged in time.
Yeah.
And that's why I really, I mean, you can't, it's one of those things where, one component really does affect the whole. So I was over leveraged in financially. If I looking back, I mean, I wasn't globally, from a global perspective, I wasn't too terrible, but there was just too many things that were relying on my ability to do the work. And that's where I felt like I was over leveraged. And I would start, this time famine started creeping in, where, someone would call and I wasn't doing a whole lot. So okay, I'll go do that. I'll go plunge that toilet. I'll go fix that furnace. I'll go, whatever. And again, I was really smart about fixing a lot of that stuff. I mean, I never been taught it, but I just figured I could figure it out. And that's the problem with the entrepreneur, is that they will figure it out. And, if you're out there and, you're the one updating your website, or you're the one updating, your lease, and you're the one going doing the evictions, and you're the one doing all the showings, that's the sort of stuff that you can start to farm out to other people, whether you're using a virtual assistant or just hiring somebody on the side to just do this sort of stuff. That's where you really need to start looking. When you could be paying somebody $10 to $12 an hour, you have to realize that that is what you're paying yourself. And if you got into this business to make $10 or $12 an hour, you are never going to make it big. You have to get someone else to do that sort of work, because you may enjoy doing the deal. I know a lot of real estate investors that love doing the deal, but when they get into the weeds of it, that's where they don't do well. And or if that's maybe where you do well, then you have someone else do the deal. But find something that you're good at, stick with that. That's the highest and best use of your time, and then get someone else to do all the stuff that's just not enjoyable.
Yeah, no, that's so true. What sort of mindset shift helped you like get out of that funk you were in? Like, did you change your thinking in any way to help your mental strength to come back?
Yeah, I often say that probably the best 6 inches of real estate that I ever invested in was the 6 inches up here, right?
Yeah,
That is the truth. I mean, you talked about the E-Myth, and I'm really grateful for that book, and I've gotten connected to Michael Gerber's people, and he's right now pushing this thing called Radical You, and I just became a student of his, if you will. I mean, whether he knew or not, that's kind of what I did. But I also was reading books by Chet Holmes, the late Chet Holmes. Seven Habits, all the books at that time, and that, of course, Good to Great was coming out, and that was an amazing book. There was just so many things, and of course, I'm also in a BNI. I was in a BNI chapter, which is a networking organization, and I had that brain trust of people that I could go back to and really talk about if they had different questions or different things that were, that I had that I couldn't maybe quite figure out. I could go to that brain trust, and say to them, hey, I'm having this problem with, maybe an employee, or, maybe in something like this. And they just gave me perspective and ways that maybe that I didn't maybe even think that I needed, but they gave me an outlet for that. So there's just lots of different things, lots of different mindset. But for me, it really was about getting clarity in my vision in terms of where it was that I wanted to go. And that mindset that's what's been carrying me forward ever since.
Yeah, and so we are far removed now from the dark times. So you're in a much better spot now.
Indeed.
So, how has this really impacted your life and changed how you live your life and have your time wealth?
Well, so during that time, I was also getting my real estate license so I could manage properties for other people, because how do I say this? There was a lot of other people that were coming to me that wanted me to. They were looking at the outside in, going, "You seem to be doing pretty well," and meanwhile, I'm I'm on fire, and I'm like, "Absolutely," And
Yeah.
so I got my broker's license so I could start managing properties for other people, but. I kept, I managed to keep a sizable chunk of my portfolio, and I started growing that property management side to help deleverage my revenues. And that was a big thing, because I also had realized that I was creating another job for myself when I got into the property management side of it. So from that side of things, where now it's interesting, because now I spend about an hour or two a week managing a portfolio of about 250 units. It's a far cry from where I was. So,
Yeah.
and I say that because I have amazing people that I work that run the business. But it was not a short path to get there, and I am so incredibly grateful for the people that do run that, because sometimes it can be tough. But we also have a really, really good process, a really good infrastructure, and we often will go back. They will tweak it. Now it's to the point where they're tweaking it, where they're running the process, and they look for better processes. And we'll go back, and sometimes we even just have to look at it from a broad scope and take it apart and put it back together again. And it takes a special kind of person to be able to do that. So I'm just so incredibly grateful for that. But it was one board of intention, because I knew that it was going to be having a rock solid vision for the future, where I wanted the company to go. I wanted to have an impact in the community, not just about making money, but have an impact in the community, and have a very clear infrastructure that's based on that vision and processes that drive it all.
Yeah, no, I think that's a really good message for people. And the thing that really stands out is you have to have that clear vision, and then you build everything along the way to help you achieve that. I think that's really powerful. So where can people get a hold of you, get your content, and order your books?
Well, thanks. I appreciate you saying that, because like
Yeah.
the vision infrastructure process was not one that just kind of just came to me in a dream. It was one, like I said, was born of intention. But welcome to reach out to me on Facebook. I'm kind of getting maxed out on friends, but you're always welcome to follow me on there at Mark Dolfini. But also on LinkedIn, I'm on LinkedIn. But Landlord Coach page is on Facebook, and also landlordcoach.com. You're welcome to follow me there. And I have a blog there you can subscribe to. But also for your listeners, I do have a free download, which is a free copy of The Judge that you can download. And it's a short story. I think that many people who are working a job and also have some rental properties on the side might be able to relate to it. I don't know, maybe a guy that that I once was could relate to that. But you can go there easily enough at landlordcoach.com/PTP.
PTP, perfect. And I will do that as soon as we're finished here. I'll download my free copy. So Mark,
Okay.
so Mark, I just want to thank you so much for sharing your success story with us, along with the tribulations along the way. I think a lot of people can learn a lot from that. So thank you.
Just keep your foot on the gas, guys. I promise it's I don't remember exactly who said it, but I didn't say it was going to be easy, but I will say it's going to be worth it. But definitely get a rock solid vision for your future, and you'll get there.
For sure. Perfect. And to you, our viewers, I wish you well on your journey from purchase to profits. See you next time.